Hi, I'm Dave Barnes.
And I'm John McLaughlin.
And welcome to Dadville.
Dadville's a podcast where we talk about life, love, and the pursuit of awesome dadding.
It's funny thoughts and deep talks.
So please, enjoy your time here in Dadville and enjoy this episode with...
S.D. Smith. John.
Dave. Dave.
He swims in water so fast. In 2024, John.
Yeah.
There's one word.
Yeah.
That keeps popping into my head.
Okay. What is it?
Simplify. I'm going to simplify my life. And the first thing I'm going to focus on is my meal prep. Okay? If I have to go into one more crowded grocery store, John.
Oh, I hear you, man. Okay. Man. And I have a great idea to help you with that. You can simplify with Factor.
Oh.
Yeah. Factor's ready-to-eat meal delivery takes the stress out of meal planning, and it is stressful, right? And it sets you up for success in the new year. Okay. Skip the grocery stores. Skip the prep work. Okay. Skip the cooking fatigue. Instead, get chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals delivered right to your door.
John.
Yep.
I'm not going to do this unless I get over 35 meals to choose from per week. Bottom line.
Dave, sit down. You're already sitting down, but sit down even further because Factor has you covered, Dave, with over 35 meals to choose from per week, including options like keto, calorie smart, vegan and veggie, and more. Plus, over 55 weekly add-ons. You'll have a ton of nutritious and flavorful options.
John, I am in.
I knew it.
Forget frantic lunch preps and rushed dinners.
No.
While you're listening to Rush, Factor's 2-minute meals are going to be my secret weapon in the new year. I'm going to fuel up with restaurant-quality meals, all delivered. Guess where, John?
I mean, they could deliver it to the sidewalk,
They're not gonna do
it'd
that,
be
though.
a great deal.
Nope.
Right to your door.
Straight to my door.
Right to your door.
Yep. And if I open the door, I bet they'll throw it in.
Factor has everything you need for a week of flavorful, nutritious eats, in addition to ready-to-eat meals. They have cold-pressed juices, smoothies, energy bites, extra protein, veggie sides, and more to keep you energized during the frantic times.
Head to factormeals.com/Dadville50 and use code Dadville50 to get 50% off.
That's insane. 50% off? That's half if my math is correct. That's code Dadville50 at factormeals.com/Dadville50 to get 50% off. What's the initial thing with authors? Why is that a thing? I think it's cool. I like it.
It's so dumb. So I was working at a cafe and I'd been laid off, and I was in a really low point in my life. I was making like $12 an hour, 2 young kids, and it was a really miserable part. And I was writing books, or I was starting to write, and I was getting published in this thing. And I was like, what should I do? Because Sam Smith there's a bunch of other authors, and that was before the musician Sam Smith came around. But there was a real famous sports writer named Sam Smith, and it was like, so if you Googled it or searched or whatever, it was just like a nightmare. So I was like, I got to differentiate, but I don't know what to do. And my friend was like, we should be S.D. Smith. Like, you love P.G. Woodhouse and G.K. Chesterton and all these guys. And I was like, well, I'll never do that. That's the dumbest. That is so pretentious. I would never do that. But anyway, I did it anyway. So,
and then here you are.
And it worked.
I decided to do it as an homage. It's an homage to my favorite authors instead of a pretentious little jerk who wants attention.
I think that as far as if that works for me, they're always synonymous. Sadly,
sure.
For me.
Yeah.
They're you can't separate the two. So, Sam, we are really, really, really excited to have you. This is kind of the first time that we've done this where we've had an author who writes books like you. Like we've had, I guess. John, have we had fiction writers on? I actually don't know that we have we?
I thought you were going to say the first time I've had an author on that we have not heard of.
That we're not sure is an author. And that's fine. And we love that.
That we've discovered.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that we've done.
I don't know. Now I'm nervous because I'm like, I feel like we did interview someone who hadn't published a novel, but they had like written a bunch of books and they're working on a novel. I can't remember who that was.
I think we're going to call you the first for this, which I'm really, yeah, that's right. It was AI. I'm really excited about this. I'm stoked to have you on, and there's a barrage of questions. So I want to get into this, and so what we do here on Dadville is we start with what we call the brag sheet, which is like this is your life. Oh, yeah. So okay,
Dadville alum.
Okay, okay. Hasn't written fiction. I guess is every song fiction? I digress. Okay, so Sam, here we go. Wrote the Green Ember series, which is a million-selling series, which is bananas. Green Ember made it to #1 on the Audible chart for best-selling audiobooks,
which is crazy.
That
Number
is,
one on
again,
Audible. That's insane.
So, okay, is this the greatest title of the book ever? Mooses with Bazookas and Other Stories Children Should Never Read. Co-authored a novel with his son, which I'm so excited to talk to you about. Jack Zulu and the Waylander's Key. Founder of Story Warren, which is also really cool. Authored a course on writing called The Green Writer. Sadly, is a Liverpool fan. We're going to keep going through that. Fun facts, which I love this. Grew up in South Africa. You and Dave Matthews, I was going to say, have a lot of things
pretty much
in common.
The same life.
That'd be, yes, really similar. And turned 13. This is crazy. The day that Nelson Mandela was released from prison. That is so cool. So thrilled to have you on, Gina. This is, I'm really stoked about talking to you about this.
You keep talking yourself into it. I think the more times you say it, the more you're like, it's going to happen.
It will. No, it's manifestation thing. So first I want to I know you get asked this a million times. Why Liverpool? No. What made you want to be an author? Like, how did that begin? It was just cafe days. You were dreaming about it, or when did sort of that whole thing start?
Yeah, it was super organic. Like a lot of people, it's the same story for a lot of people who write children's books. But I was a dad, and so I told my kids stories. I was always that kind of a person. My oldest brother told me stories when I was little. I grew up in a Holler in West Virginia. I don't know if you heard of a Holler. I don't know how cityfied you guys are, but back in the woods. My dad said we lived so far back in the woods that no one lived behind us. And when I was little, I thought that was true, which is
that is so good.
A fantasy element comes in because I would just imagine that, really, if you just kept going back and back, and
nobody's back there.
So I grew up with hearing stories about animals, because that's pretty natural, when you're in that kind of environment, a rural environment. I live in rural West Virginia, which is to say, I live in West Virginia.
Right.
So I grew up with stories about the pony and stories about dogs and stuff. So I would tell my baby sister those stories, and then I told my kids stories. It was just kind of a natural thing.
So when you say that your older brother would tell you stories, what's the setting? Like, you guys are laying in your bunk beds at night, and he would tell a story?
Yeah. Did you go straight to Little House on the Prairie? Is that what you were thinking?
A little bit.
You're laying in the barn on your hay beds.
Yeah,
and
Paul just.
I'm imagining there's livestock around.
Yeah. Well, a little bit. So I literally did grow up. There was a trailer, which we moved out of a trailer into a basement of a log cabin that my dad was building in a Holler in Wayne County, West Virginia. And he never finished the cabin. We went to the mission field that was his dream, was to sort of build this log cabin out in the woods, and it never got finished. So I grew up in sort of a bit of a dank, dark basement that we were trying for years to get out of, but we never got out of it, except we did finally and went to Africa. But that's the setting for where my brother, and it was bunk beds. There were 3 of us brothers at that time. Became 4. Really, really small little room. He had a bed, and then we had a bunk bed, and he would tell me stories. We're on kind of a walk on the gravel road up the Holler. Stories about Sparky, the horse, or Bojo, the dog, and it was a great time.
Bojo, what a great dog name.
He was a border collie, and he didn't really belong to us. I think he belonged to a neighbor, Jack Smith, this old man who had cows and everything. But he he was super loyal. He was a great dog. So I would tell stories to my baby sister, the same thing. I would kind of just rehash those stories, and became very inventive. And actually, honestly, living back in the woods, and we went to town to go to school and stuff. But that was an incredible training ground for my vocation. And I wasn't a reader at the time. I didn't really grow up a lot of authors grew up going to the library all the time and reading nonstop. I liked Star Wars and Indiana Jones and Star Trek and the Dukes of Hazzard and the Lone Ranger and sports. I loved football and basketball and soccer and everything. I love sports. So I was more of a typical sort of a guy. I wasn't really bookish. until I was in my teens. But I played all the time, and I played in the woods with my brothers. We played Army, played Star Trek, and if they weren't there, I would play anyway, and I would invent whatever. And we didn't have a lot of money, so my dad would like saw out, from like the materials he was making the cabin with. He would like saw out like a gun, or like a laser gun or something, and so we didn't buy all the stuff, like all the Star Wars stuff that we wanted. But he would make stuff, and then I would make like fleets of airplanes out of like bark, or battleships out of like bark, and I would make paper airplanes, and I would design them, and I would have a story for each one. And I would invent games and stuff. So I was always doing that kind of stuff, and boredom, and the woods, and a little bit of poverty is like are really great ingredients for being creative. So I feel like I was world building. I wasn't a writer,
right?
I wasn't a reader, but I was already a world builder.
Did you grow up feeling like, oh, I'm good at this? Or did you grow up just thinking like, well, everybody's good at this. This is like, people come up with stories. This is just what you do.
I didn't think about it at all, really. I don't think I never, it's only really like sort of looking back that I realized how much play and boredom and all that was a part of sort of creating the capacities that I have now.
Yeah.
But at the time I would have thought of myself as like an athlete, like a shy kid who played sports and was like pretty good at sports. And I never would have thought of anything that was like intellectual or like bookish. I would have thought, no, that's not me. I'm not that at all. But so no, I didn't think about that at all as a kid.
And then you didn't start writing until after y'all had started a family. Is that
Yeah.
true?
Well, a little bit. So in school, again, I didn't really notice it, but I would sort of write like little stories. I heard, so at one point, I think maybe it was in first grade. And again, I wasn't a reader. So I had a teacher that read Little Women to us and the Boxcar Children. But Little Women really stuck out to me because the character of Joe March is a writer. And I remember thinking, like, for some reason, like you grow up pretty rural and you're far away from things. So you think, I thought of like a writer as like an astronaut or an NBA player or maybe I thought of them as like vaguely like British or far away.
Right.
And so for some reason, the fact that Louisa May Alcott, this Joe character, the teacher said something about it being based on her life. And I was like, oh, so she's like an American. And for some reason and she was like not rich and she had a bunch of siblings, which I had. And I just kind of it got like the distance went away a little bit. And I thought, oh, you can be a person can be a writer. And then I thought, well, like, that's the coolest thing. Like, why would you do anything else? So I didn't really think of it like necessarily vocationally or in big terms, but at that time I thought, I'll write a little story. And so I wrote like a little dog story so I started doing that kind of a thing. And if we had an assignment in school, I was always kind of good at that. So I always thought of myself as, I'm kind of good at that, but I never really, that didn't translate into like, I would like to be a novelist. I didn't really even think I knew about that. I still thought I'll play for West Virginia. And then I'll go play for the Knicks, and that'll be my life. That's so I wasn't too, but it did the walls of like impossibility started to break down a little bit.
Isn't it funny? I feel like so many of us in the creative vocational space, that is such a consistent story. Is like you don't know it's a thing, whatever that thing is you do and you love to do, until somebody, the world, life, classroom, TV, something brings it to the forefront where it's like, oh no, that's something people do. And you're like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Like people do that? Like people I would know that? Yeah, so-and-so.
Yeah.
You met that one time or whatever, your uncle, whatever it is. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, and everything kind of goes Technicolor. Yeah. And then life has this option for something that you just, especially when you have a gifting for it, like you're saying, Sam, like where you already feel a little bit of a proclivity for it.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And it's so slow, like clicking into place. Like there's like little parts of it. But you guys have probably experienced that where you've talked to somebody or like somebody in your family has been like, oh yeah. Like my kids have a completely different approach to the arts than I do. My kids are like, oh yeah, it's normal to be an entrepreneur. It's normal to be, I'd never met somebody like I'm somebody that ran a business. I was like, nobody in my family did that. Yeah. Nobody went to college. Nobody. So it was just out there. It was weird. I knew like my papa wrote poetry and stuff. So it wasn't weird, but it was just like to know somebody that ran a business, knew anything about money. It was just totally, but my kids are like, no, it's normal for a family to have a little business. That's just like a normal.
Well, we laugh all the time. John is a prodigiously good piano player, genuinely. And my kids are so used to seeing him play. And I'm like, this is like such a gift and at the same time, you're kind of screwed because you think like, yeah, you can probably let's just walk a couple blocks and see if somebody up there plays piano. And I'm like, oh no, that's not how this works. So one of the things I have a couple of questions about exactly this as a job because I just don't. Again, I've not sat and talked to someone who does exactly what you do really before. One of the things I'm curious about, and inquiring minds want to know, is being an author anything like being a songwriter? In that, when you're working on a book, on a story, right? Do you have those moments where you're mowing? You know, you're on a run. You're at Target.
You're about to
whatever.
sink a 3-pointer at the Y.
Yeah, you're just about to crank that 3, and you go, "Oh my gosh, that's how that chapter ends. Book ends. That's how the book begins." You know, and then you kind of grab your phone, or is that like a thing too? Or are you more like no, like when I have where I write, and it's when I go sit. That's kind of when I open the creative floodgates, and it happens then.
No, I had the same experience. I was like a failed singer songwriter. That's
oh wow.
That's kind of part of my story was, and we could go into that, but there's a cliche like how many hours a day do you work on your writing, and of course the cliche answer is all of them.
Yeah.
Exactly what you're saying is it's always alive. So I think it's funny because I don't know if you guys experience this, but it's sometimes it's hard because people don't see like what the work you're doing all the time, but you're kind of, for me, I've always been like the kid that's like lays awake at night and I'm the 47-year-old man who lays awake at night and just the brain will not stop. It's going good. And it doesn't mean I'm like super productive or anything. It's often counterproductive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But it's going nonstop unless I can like derail it with like an audiobook or something. But so I have to. Yeah, so it's always going, and I have the exact same experience.
Do you voice like so? Let's say again, for the sake of example, you're mowing the yard, and you're mowing and you're thinking, you're like, okay, and then it's like, ding. Is your move as an author? Do you grab and voice memo? Do you type? Like, what is the way that you actually?
Because Dave and my phones are both filled with like hundreds and hundreds of little snippets of ideas.
I do that some. I'm the dumbest. This is the stupidest way, and for some reason I've not corrected it. But I send myself emails.
Oh yeah.
So the subject line of my email will be like 50 words and it's just got detail and
just the subject line. You don't even get to the body.
Because I'm afraid I won't or something. So I just like, and it's enough to get the thing down. But I'll do that like in the car or whatever. I'll usually pull over, or sometimes and it's like all capital letters, and it looks like a Donald Trump tweet or something. It's so it's crazy, and it's like 90% misspelled, and it's terrible. So sometimes I'm looking at these, I'm like, what was I trying to say? Or I'll just say to my wife, like, email me the words gray stone thundersword, species X or some stupid. That sounds like something I actually don't write.
Actually, I'm wildly interested in wherever that was going to go.
If you're not going to use that, I actually would love to run with that. I was going to
say, put it in either that's already an AC/DC song or we're going to write it. So,
I do, but I feel the same way about capturing, like, because especially as I get older. I have gone through the whole period where I thought, well, I remember things, and then now I'm positive I don't, which is such a much better like humble orientation toward reality. And I just send myself emails, so many emails, and then I try to like get rid of those emails when I get to my computer.
And
then I'll expand it or whatever, make a little note. But it's been the same way. I have to capture stuff because it's.
We laugh about this all the time, but our version of that is like the all caps misspelled is when we're on runs and you have a song idea and you try to sing it while you're running into a voice note.
Yeah,
and it just sounds like you're either on the losing side of a tickle fight or like. You've been dropped into a war zone, and it's just and then you're listening back to it, and you're like, wait, and
I mean, I think that I think it's actually been productive once ever for me.
But
I've done it.
I've done it. Album. You're just straight on the album, just like that.
Just like that. Yeah.
That's
my gosh.
That is the single.
Just sent it and it got mixed. Is that?
So Dave and I just did a couple episodes where we talked about work specifically, and I've said this many times on this podcast before. I had a hard time for me growing up. My dad was a super hard worker and had more of a traditional job, was like, left, worked, came home from the end of a day's work, and my mom as well. And so when I become an adult, I'm the singer-songwriter. Obviously, my day looks very different than my parents. And when we had kids, it didn't really, come into my mind until we had kids, and I started to think of the world that they're growing up in, the house that they're growing up in, and what they're seeing dad, quote unquote, work. It was a hard thing for me. I've been processing it through the years. I've been a dad for 11 years now, right? So, but it was a thing for me for a while. I felt lazy. I felt like I was not really working because my days did not look like my dad's did specifically, or my mom's. As you're describing sort of how you work and all that kind of stuff, did you have any of that? Or what did you grow up seeing your parents do occupationally?
I have the exact same experience. I've been a parent for 21 years almost, and and I had a regular job and transitioned to this. And even my regular job was my last regular job had a little bit unusual hours. So I almost felt a little bit of that before. But yeah, I feel that because so much of it is mental. And so I feel that same, I've got to prove to somebody, but I had the exact same thought, even a lot recently, oh man, is it good that my kids are experiencing me? I just went through a real, I don't know if you have this at the end of an album or prepping for an album or something, but finishing a manuscript. And so I'm on the downhill sort of plunge. And so I'm it's 12-hour days and just trying to stay in the world and taking breaks, but I'm kind of semi-human and I'm not really, I'll just keep going and I'll sleep late. And that's sort of natural for me. And I'm is it killing my kids that I'm, waking up at 11 a.m. or something and writing all day, it had the exact same feeling. And it's funny. I'm very conscious even lately. I don't know, you sort of tell yourself, we're all storytellers all the time and we're thinking about our life as a story. And that's kind of a big deal. People are tuned into that, but it's so funny. I was on a walk with my daughter yesterday, my 11-year-old, my baby. I have 4 kids, 2 girls, 20 and 11, and 2 boys, 18 and 14. And I was with my baby girl, and I think I was maybe in a particular sort of one of those little bit natural sort of artist kind of funks, telling myself a bunch of lies and reinforcing that kind of stuff, and thinking and I had the exact same thought, what are my kids what is my kids' experience of me? And it was so cool because that day, I had 2 gifts from her, and one of them was we were on a walk around sort of our little rural neighborhood, and I didn't even see it, but I looked down and I saw that she had a package of I don't know, it was a candy bar wrapper or something in her hand, and she'd picked it up, and then she bent down and picked up another one, that was just on the road somewhere, and I was oh, good job, and she said. Oh, I'm just like my dad. And I was oh, she's her story about me is that's in her mind is when we go walking around, you pick up trash from places. And it's it's a little thing, but to me it was a big deal. It's oh, the things I'm telling myself that the story that they're going to say that they feel is maybe not exactly lined up. Maybe it's not a tragedy, this dramatic tragedy.
Right.
And she even said later the same day, she said, oh yeah, we were going to play a game of some kind, I think checkers or something. She said, oh, you always, no, she said, I want to let somebody else pick. She's cause you always let other people pick. I want to be like you, kind of you always let other people pick the game that even if you don't want to play it, you play it. And I was that's definitely not the story I would have told them about myself. And these are 2 little tiny things, but they meant so much to me because what I feel, it gave me a little bit of relief. Oh, maybe I'm telling myself this sort of tragedy about my poor kids going through this this hellscape of a life with this artistic dad who's a goofball and doesn't know his head from a hole in the ground or whatever. And I don't think I got that one quite right, but
no, you nailed that. That's it.
Yeah, okay, good. But maybe it's not. Maybe it's not a tragedy. Yeah. Maybe it's a comedy with a wedding at the end. I don't know.
I mean, it's funny. If I got those 2 comments from my girls, that I would be on cloud 9. That would make my day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think too, that's I love that phrase so much. how do my kids experience me? Like, that's such a fascinating, mildly terrifying thought, but I love you thinking about that. So I have more questions. So buckle up.
I'd really like to wrap it up, but okay.
This is guys, I got to mow the yard if you don't mind.
I've got to email myself a novel chapter.
You're just like,
don't do.
So here's one of the things that I think is so fascinating about what you do. When you are building these stories, like you said, you're building these worlds, right? These characters that occupy not just one book, but carry through a series of books, so the people who read them really get to know them and have these great affinities for them as the heroes and whatever. I just feel like it would be so much pressure, especially, when you're having success like you do, I love the pictures on your Instagram of all these people that are at these events to see you. And it's got to be so affirming when you see that, to go like, man, all these people enjoying what I'm doing. But I just sit there and I go, I just think it would feel so heavy when you realize that you can make these huge decisions with a character that means so much to people. On a whim. I mean, you would never do that. But I think about that so much. I'm like, that has got to be a really weird thing, unless you're just like, oh, no, it's like you guys writing a song, I'm going to write more, and this is what I've chosen for this character. But I just think it's so fascinating to think that all those people that are reading, all those people that come to these events, they're looking at you going like, okay, you got one more book in this series. Like, what are you going to do? I'm like, oh, my God, that would feel, like when I watch a series I really love, and I'm really into a character, I'm reading a book series, whatever, I'm like, what are they going to do? Like, what are they going to,
and you decide all of it.
And you decide all of it. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah. I was talking to my dad. My dad's a combat veteran from Vietnam. And he went to, he was likely to get drafted, but he volunteered. And he wanted he wanted to be he wanted two things in life. He said, I want to be an old man with a bunch of kids around, and I want to be a combat veteran. And he's achieved both of those now. But he volunteered, and he took tests, and he when he first volunteered, and he didn't go to college or anything, and they sent him to officer candidate school, and they said your scores are really good, and he's just some hick from the Holler, and they said and they wanted to point him to West Point, and he turned down going to West Point because he was afraid he'd miss the war, and he wanted to get married, and he couldn't get married, so he got married and went to Vietnam. And my brother was born while he was in Vietnam, my oldest brother, and he didn't want to be an officer. He kind of wanted to but he said when he was going through that process about whether or not he should become an officer or not, and basically become a first lieutenant. There were a lot of first lieutenants in Vietnam because a lot of them were being killed, and so there was a lot of need for him. But he basically said, I didn't want to be an officer, but I wanted even less to follow orders from somebody else who, if our lives were going to be in somebody's hands, which I didn't like any of it, I wanted them to be in my hands, because I didn't feel supremely confident, but I felt like, the God's given me gifts, and and so this is the stakes are slightly lower when you're writing a novel, but I feel similarly to that. Like you're describing, I am by nature a very anxious person, worried. Like that's I think that's the other side of that, really thoughtfulness and being somewhat insightful or inventive or whatever, that I can't turn it off. And so I've struggled with anxiety and probably depression and all that kind of stuff. Like it's easy. That's like my natural state, is to be sort of like things to feel heavy and to have a difficulty sort of breaking free from that. And actually find it really liberating to be caught up in writing a story where I'm not focusing on myself, which is similar to playing sports.
Wow.
Or something like that, where you just kind of forget yourself for a while. That's like the best feeling in the world, is like, I'm not thinking about myself anymore. Yeah. And I try to orient all my art, all whatever I'm creating. I think of it as a vocation with an apron on, where I'm serving other people. I don't think of myself as like an elite artist who's like, oh, I'm so good, and so now people need to gather around me. I think of myself like a line cook. Like and I don't want to lose the magic of it. I try to sort of hold both. It's this miraculous, beautiful, powerful vocation that's like got stardust in it, and magic and glory and miracle, and I'll never let go of that. But at the same other time, I'm like, it's an ordinary vocation rooted in love and service, and I'm not superior to the plumber or the garbage man or the pastor or the homemaker. I'm like, we're all the same. We're all like loving each other and listening to the voice of God to call us to do something in the world. So I try to hold on to both those things at the same time, and even though they conflict, and I'm sure you guys do the same with your music. But so I feel the responsibility, and I really do feel it keenly because of how much I love the kids, and because the book started as stories for my own kids. The some of that problem, some of the crippling anxiety of my life, it has been, well, I say it's been two things. It's been a place in which God has shown up to be for me, to be strength in my weakness, to where that's insane to me that I would ever speak to a group. If you go back 10, 15 years and tell me that I was going to speak to a group of 5 people, I would have been like, yeah, okay, I'll be president too, or something. Like it was the same thing, or I'll play in the NBA. It was like, and at that time I was aware of my limitations. So it's just impossible to think of. And so it's the same with the writing and stuff. So I would have thought I would be completely crippled by that problem. And when I wrote the second book in the Green Ember series, after the first book, really surprisingly, like my first book that I'm like, well, I'll try this out, and then, it'll obviously stink, but someday I'll write something good. And then everyone looked at that book and I was like, oh gosh, that's so terrifying. But that sort of took off. And then I'm writing the second book, and I was like, you know what I'll do? I'll kill a really important character in this book. And for some reason, there was like, I felt a little bit of that, like, tension or worry, but I don't know, man. That was like God showing up to me in this really small way. It's not Vietnam. It's not, the stakes are lower, but they're pretty high for me and the audience in a way, because they do care. To them, they're dumb. They think it's like Narnia or something. I'm just kidding. But they do have this, like, it's a big deal to them, which makes it a big deal to me. But I write with this. I think about these 3 words to sort of anchor me as a career. I think about it as an MFA. I don't have an MFA. I have some suspicion about some MFAs. But I think of it as these 3 words: modesty, fidelity, and audacity. That I want to be rooted in, like, who I am. My dad, there's a very strong, like, don't get too big for your britches kind of a mentality with people where I come from. So I want to have that modesty. I want to understand that whatever gifts I have, they're from God. And I want to have fidelity. I want to be faithful. I want to be honest. I want to tell the truth. I want to be like Tolkien, who believed the Lord of the Rings was a true story. Not that the events happened, but that it was faithful to reality. I want to tell true stories. I want to have faithfulness. And then I want to have audacity. Like, because I can, like, it's okay. Like, out of that abundance, out of that gift, I can be audacious. So for some reason, this anxious, fearful, terrified person who would be afraid to speak up, half of my life, I'll talk to a group of 3,000 people, and I'll write something that I think is going to be a gift with a kind of insane confidence that doesn't make any sense. And I don't know where it comes from, but somewhere in that convoluted story is an answer to your question, Dave.
Hang on a second.
Yeah.
I need a break.
Oh, wow.
I know. We worked so hard. Can we grab some coffee?
Gosh. John.
Yeah.
You said coffee, right?
Yes.
Okay. Today's episode, and what I'm drinking right now, you can hear it. Actually, that's a terrible sound effect I just made. But that cup of Joe that I'm drinking, John, guess what it's brought to you by? Can we sing it together?
Ready? 1, 5, 6, 7, 8. Methodical coffee.
Oh, we did it. We both did it fast.
Well, we've got coffee now. You just took a sip.
That's right. I'm amped. I'm juiced.
Now listen, Methodical Coffee, they have craft coffee and tea for people of all kinds. Roasted, blended, brewed, served, and perfected by verified coffee and tea nerds like you and me, Dave.
Well, more you than me. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Which I don't say that a lot, so if you really want to have a moment,
just say it one more time.
That's exactly right, John.
Yeah, I wanted to say it with you.
And Methodical isn't just the name of their business.
No.
It's their approach to,
everything.
Everything.
Yeah. But Dave, you know what the best of Methodical's coffee? It's got to be our Dadville blend.
Yes, John. The Dadville blend is the fuel that gets me going. It's not the only fuel that gets me going, everyone. I mean, my family, God.
The gospel. Yeah,
Sure. But it's a big part of it. It's the liquid fuel. Okay.
Yep, there we go.
Filled with hints of chocolate, graham, and brown sugar.
Well, Dave, Methodical, they're on a mission to connect people to the beauty of life through coffee experiences for people like you, right? Methodical's been roasting and hosting for over 9 years. That's almost 10 years. They offer a wide selection of coffees and teas that are complex yet easygoing.
Oh, Johnny, I'm just giggles McGillicuddy over here. On their site, you'll also find who is a big Methodical fan.
Yeah, he is.
He's the guy that
he does web design for them now.
On their site, you'll find brew guides, John, that'll teach you how to turn your coffee brewing chore into a beloved ritual. Craft a cup you'll love with Methodical coffee. Also, get 10% off your first order of coffee or tea with discount code. Say it with me. Dadville. Do you have any health goals for the new year? I know I do. Maybe you want to be smarter about eating out too much or buying healthier foods. Well, I know who's going to help me stick to my goals. Thrive Market. Thrive Market is the go-to for all of my grocery and household essentials. Plus, the convenience of getting everything online, then quickly shipped to my doorstep is a huge time saver. I love that Thrive Market carries brands with the highest quality ingredients and sourcing methods. They restrict hundreds of ingredients across their food and cleaning categories, and I can use their on-site filters to suit my lifestyle needs. Whether you're looking for organic kids snacks, low-sugar alternatives, or gluten-free pantry essentials, you can curate your own shopping experience with a few clicks. As a Thrive Market member, I save money on every single grocery order, over 30% each time on average. They even have a deals page that changes daily and always has some of my favorite brands like Kind, Bonza, and Applegate Organics. And check this out. When you join Thrive Market, you're also helping a family in need with their 1-for-1 membership matching program. You join, they give. Join in on the savings with Thrive Market today and get 30% off your first order plus a free $60 gift. Go to thrivemarket.com/Dadville for 30% off your first order plus a free $60 gift. That's THRIVE market.com/Dadville. thrivemarket.com/Dadville. That's great. I think it leads to another question. I'm curious. I love the way that you answer that, by the way, because I think it's a reminder to me that you obviously care, but I mean, in your explanation, it's so much of what you're inferring is that like you really care about this too. It's not just words on a page that you're going, where does it go next? It's like, God, I want to feel. Same as writing songs. Like me and John have to feel it first for them to feel it. And it's funny. I'm like, well, of course that's how it works. But I mean, it's still, I just, the weight of it feels enormous to me, especially when it's working, because all of a sudden that's that many eyes on you going like, well, it left on a cliffhanger. What happens book 3? And you're kind of like, goo.
Well, and you get anxiety about, like, I will get anxiety while I'm writing a song. I'll often come to like forks in the road where I'm like, I want to take it this way. But I know if I go this way, that's a little more marketable or whatever, Mm-hmm. I wonder if that's are you constantly coming to that fork in the road, or is it slightly different for you?
It's a little different, I think, because I didn't, when we started, like, these are stories I told my kids. And so it was an experience of many, many years of me telling them, it started on a porch, like 50 yards from where I am right now. I'm in a little garden shed writing office, which I call the forge, which is, where a smith works, in the forge. So it's this little humble garden shed. My commute is, 10 seconds from the house. But the porch, that's where the story started. And it started because my daughter was there, and she's a little girl and needs to tell her stories. And then we're on the porch, and people often ask about the rabbits because my stories are about rabbits. And I did, why did you choose rabbits? And I always tell them that I'm a rabbit Calvinist because I didn't choose the rabbits. The rabbits chose me. But because they were there and they were like there in the yard, and I just started telling her a story about rabbits, like here you are. And so and she loved it. So I just told her more. And then like for years and years, I told her and her brother story. So it was all love. It was all honest and it was all organic. So when we got to what's the climax of the Green Ember happened in this first iteration out loud with my kids, I didn't know. It was all improvisation at the time. And we finished this moment in the story and they were like quiet. And in my mind, I was like, that was awesome. Like, great job, Dad. And then they were, Dad, that's amazing. Like, we got, you got to write this down. This is so good. And so I was like, okay. And then, so I wrote it down just thinking like, this will be a gift to my kids. Like if nothing else happens, it'll be a memorial. So the stakes were so low in a sense, they were really high for us, but it was only our thing. So it was radically organic, like so I had a radical indifference to the market from the very beginning of my career. So I didn't think about it at all. I think I found out later, the market's not interested in personified animals. That's like passé or whatever. And I was like, I don't care. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't look anything up. Yeah. We just wrote the book for my kids. And I was like, I'll write the best book for them. And if it doesn't go anywhere else, we won already, because they'll have it in their house and they'll read it to their kids. And it'll be this sort of like memorial of our time together and like a relic. And crazy old Uncle Sam or crazy old grandpa wrote this book. So when we shared it with the world, which was partly responsible, my brother-in-law and partner, he was like, I like this a lot. I think we'll share it. So then we got a little tryout with an audience because of, I think, some goodwill. Nobody had ever read anything I'd written fiction wise, but some people gave it a try and it had a good cover, I think. And then it was just like, people started sharing it with other people. So it was totally organic. So and what we found out is, there were other people like us that like this kind of story. So so I didn't have time at the beginning. So that was a massive gift. I wasn't thinking about the market at all. And of course, over time, I did my job at some point along the way, and because it was, it was kind of inevitable. We needed to do something. So we try to figure out how to market. But even in those early months, people would say like, what's your marketing strategy? I want to do what you did. And I'm like, I'm working 2 jobs. I'm volunteering at my church. I'm coaching soccer. My kids are little. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, my marketing strategy is a bunch of moms gave it to other moms. So because they loved it. And it wasn't because it's like the Grapes of Wrath or something. It wasn't brilliantly written or anything. Something about it resonated deeply with the audience and they started sharing it. So I would say I don't actually, so I've like entered into the freedom of that natural, because it's so rooted in love. Every time I write, I'm just thinking about my kids. And now I've met like tens of thousands of other kids on the road. And I've looked in their faces and they're wearing rabbit ears and they're like telling. So I like have this confidence that I know that like I know them and they know me and I love them. And it's just like sitting down at home and telling my kid a story. So I haven't thought too much while I'm creating. I felt a freedom to like really do that thing that I think all artists want, is like to really try to just like tell an honest story. So I haven't felt, I don't know. I do have that other hat on, the entrepreneur hat that I've got to put on, but I don't feel like I do that when I'm writing. I feel like I do that at other times, if that makes sense. So what I'm saying is I'm a better person than you, I think.
Yeah, that's what I took away from
all
it.
I'm hearing.
Think, yeah.
And I think your kids probably don't.
My dad judging me somehow out of nowhere. Yeah. and your dad, who is a vet, I mean, he's judging me. I haven't even met him.
For sure.
The thing, so one of the things, I mean, you nail this point. I mean, again, your audience is so much of kids. Like, this is something I've thought a lot about. Let me give you a little back story to where I'm going with this. But I was with a friend of mine this weekend. I had a show last weekend, and we were kind of talking about like how we've been spending the holidays, and somehow it came up like what we were watching, and I was like, I thought about doing Harry Potter with the kids. I have a 12-year-old, 9-year-old, and a 7-year-old, and I was like, I thought about doing Harry Potter, but I was like, man, I don't know, like. It just feels maybe like a little intense. And he said something I thought was really interesting. He's like, I don't know, man. I think you're selling your kids short. I was like, you think so? And he was like, yeah, I mean, and here's a huge asterisk, but it has to be said, our kids were in a school shooting, 7 months ago. So obviously that matters. So you always have to think about that. But that being over there, I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I don't know, man. And he talked about this book called The Coddling of America, which I haven't read yet, but I want to read. The thing it made me think about is that would be interesting if I'm you, because you're writing for kids. You're trying, how do you, so the couple questions in the space I had is like, when you're writing a bad guy, the nemesis, whatever, how do you think about how to present that in a way that, because how evil can it be? How dark can it be? And then I think sort of part two of that question, how do you think as an author that's writing this stuff, how should we think about kids and stories and sort of scary things? Like, how do you navigate that in a way that it's presenting the theme you want it to, but it's not being so egregious that kids are like, I can't read this anymore. This is like terrifying. You know what I mean? How do you do that?
Well, I've never had that kind of question framed with the weight of your experience, which is such a good, sobering.
Well, I don't mean to. I'd say that just because.
No, it's good. I love it because
I'm not trying to. I'm not trying, but it's something I think about. Is what I'm saying. It can't be as easy as like let's just watch it potentially.
I'm super grateful for that context, because that is such a gift, because it takes away from the sort of like the theory of like, oh yeah, there's tough stuff in life, but chin up or whatever. It's not, you can't be flippant when you experience something like that.
For sure.
You have to be honest. And so I come from the sort of like, I don't like putting down like Christian art or movies or stuff. I think that's like, it's the easiest thing in the world is to go on Facebook and say like, oh, that Christian movie was stupid. What's really hard is making a movie is very hard.
Right.
So I have a lot of respect for people who just try things. It's hard to do anything. It's hard to stick your neck out in a world of flashing swords. So I respect people that try things. I will say that I don't love the approach of, there's a lot of bad things in the culture and a lot of toxic stuff. And so that we're really frustrated with that. And I sympathize with all that. And then, therefore I will do is I will do a clean. I don't like dirty, so I will do clean. I don't like all this violence and horrible sort of stuff, satanic or terrible. So I'm going to write safe things. And I don't like safe because kids will experience death, and because they will they will definitely experience a death scene, their own and many others probably in life. And I have a result of these books being sort of taking kids very seriously and not patting them on the head and saying, you're right. If you just do the right thing, everything will work out and you'll win the championship or whatever. Like, I hate that kind of thing, because we call that safe, but I think that's far more dangerous. So I write dangerous books, and I want to write dangerous books for kids who are dangerous. And I want them to be dangerous to the darkness. I want them to be so full of light, so full of courage, moral courage. But that, to me, to achieve that end, you have to go through, Winston Churchill said, if you're going through hell, keep going. And I just think like, you can't write good stories if you coddle the characters. You have to kill them. You have to go after them. You have to chase them up a tree, as the cliche goes, and throw stones at them. Like, that's if you love them. You do, and that's the experience of human beings. We don't become characters that are brave or heroic or share or sacrifice unless we go through pain. And the Green Ember itself, that book, I mean, if I could tell you the story, I cannot believe that book ever came out. It was the biggest example of the giving birth of something through the worst labor pains. And we probably all have stories like that, something that's beautiful and surprising and resonating that comes out of like deep pain. And so that was the experience of giving it. But but I take your point about like, I don't think it's cool. Like there's another emphasis sort of in culture to like, sort of like, I want to be edgy, or I want to like try to like, where's the edge? I think it's neat for some reason, I think a lot of kids growing up in Christian culture are like, I want to find the edge, and I think it's cool to like, I don't care about that. That doesn't interest me at all. Like Vice, I think Simone Weil talks about like imaginary evil is like interesting and exciting, but like real evil is boring and dumb. And then sometimes imaginary good is, I'm murdering this quote, but imaginary good is sort of presented as dull, but real good is beautiful and life-giving and that kind of thing. So I don't like shows that are just dark for dark's sake, or like heavy, or just trying to be edgy or push the envelope. I don't care about that. I care about loving the kids and telling them an authentic story that feels real, that where the characters go through really intense stuff. But it's not like we're not indulging it. I describe it as like it's a difference between like a person going for a swim in a septic tank is different than a person losing their wedding ring and they dive in to try to like find it, and they find it and they get out. That's different than just like, I'm just hanging out in here because it's cool, or it's I don't mind the brush with the septic tank, but it has to have meaning and it has to have purpose. So I like strong moral stories that where the kids are challenged and they face death and there's tough stuff in a way that's generous. And I always just use it as my own kids. I think about them, but I think that I tend to agree with the person who says like kids are more equipped for more than you think. And that's one reason. It's a nice thing about my books being the Green Ember books being about rabbits is there's a little bit of a displacement, a little bit of like you can do a little bit more. A kid can a little bit deeper and not be like, oh my goodness, this is like right next door. They can enter into a vicarious experience of some violence and of some death and of some sort of suffering. And I can't tell you the result of that has been, and again through no design of my own. A generous byproduct from God is that I've heard from innumerable folks going through childhood cancer, tragedies, difficult things, who sit around in cancer wards reading these books aloud and feeling brave. And I can't tell you how many kids sent pictures of kids who are donating bone marrow to their sibling. This has happened multiple times, wearing their Green Ember shirt that says, "My place beside you, my blood for yours, till the green ember rises or the end of the world."
Wow.
And they resonate with this stuff in a way that like I didn't design it, but it's like this byproduct of taking them very seriously and loving them and saying like, I respect you intellectually, which the best authors do. Madeleine L'Engle, 90 publishers told her, kids don't talk like this. And of course, what happens when the book gets published? Boom. Everybody's like, oh my goodness, it's awesome. C.S. Lewis takes kids seriously. I think J.K. Rowling takes kids seriously. So I want to do that. I want the stakes to be high. I want it to feel important. And I want them to go through these vicarious experiences of death and because I think dangerous stories are important, especially when they're written with an honesty about like the capital R reality sort of flowing through them, a submission to sort of the way God made the world and receiving it as a gift, but also this dangerous landscape. I think that can be, I mean, I know that's powerful for me and my kids, so I just want to give that gift.
Man, that is beautiful. Yeah. I love the way you put that. Taking kids seriously. What a it's so funny because as you say that and you talk about those authors, that is the sort of through line, is there's no pandering. There's no like, breaking things down to the most digestible bits. That's a wonderful way to put that.
I'm sorry. When you see that, when you see it in a movie or something like, you guys are all right. I'm patting you on the head. Everything you guys think is right. And, somebody deviated from that, but they got back on track and now they're okay. Like, it's not true. You don't believe it. It can have like 1,000 true facts in it and be completely dishonest, like at its core. Like, and I don't want to lie to kids because they are going to have shootings and cancer, and we're all going to, the suffering that comes. If you just get married and have a job, you are going to have suffering. And so you got to be prepared. Like that's part of the whole like gift of like sort of empathy and vicarious experience of fiction is that you get to exercise your imagination in these ways. And so if I can equip kids, if I can give them some kind of a gift, even if it's a small, moves the needle a little bit for them. I mean, what would you rather do in the world than love a bunch of vulnerable kids? And you get invited into their home and their heart. It's like the best honor anybody could ask for. It's such a privilege and such an honor.
I can't imagine how you must feel seeing those pictures, like in the cancer ward and the little kids going to donate blood with the shirt on. I mean, that's so powerful. That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. And they are truly heroic people, and I love it because they have a language for understanding it because they see these sort of heroic characters and they think, well, I'll do what they did. I'll lay down my life. I'll do this, and it's incredible. They're so inspiring to me.
That is crazy. One of the things that I think is so cool about what you do too, which was really fun to see so much on your Instagram, is that your kids are so involved in sort of your space. This, be it that you wrote this book with your son, which is so cool and crazy. And then I love the picture of your daughter that's selling her earrings. I love that they're on stage with you playing. What is sort of the methodology there? I mean, I know, low hanging fruit is like, it's just fun to have your kids around, but is there an intentionality to that too? Like you've sort of workshopped or seen, or is that something they came to you and said, hey, we want to be a part of this too? Like, how do you think about that?
I think it's an economic decision. Like you start to really understand the roots of slavery, and you just say, like, I can get these people, and I don't have to pay them a whole lot.
The tax write-off.
Yeah, it's really easy. No, it's so organic. Again, it's just like this is the need, and then here we are, and like having them. I think I've always just that's a MO for us. Naturally, we homeschool and we do that sort of like it's just I don't know. We always I always wanted to be a dad. I always wanted to be. I was always that kind of a guy. Like I always like looking out for this little kid and like putting a blanket over somebody and helping someone through the barbed wire fence and like that's my natural. So I love the togetherness. I love it, and I love having the whole family together. So, and I always long for shepherding and sort of pastoring and. I don't know about you guys, but I've been in my life. I've been like, oh, that's the smartest guy here. So let's like listen to him and he's going to tell us something or like that. I get put in those positions sometimes in small community sort of stuff and always long for somebody to just say like, hey, Sam, you know how like you don't want anybody to tell you to go to bed. And then like you get old enough and you're like, I wish somebody would tell me to go to bed. I wish somebody would give me limits, some mentorship. I've always longed for that. And my parents were great. They were wonderful in so many ways. My dad was definitely of his generation, which was like, they'll figure it out kind of a thing, which is cool. And there's all kinds of gifts in that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was definitely a person who longed to like, this is the way. Oh, you want to do this? Like, and I hope it was generous. I hope it's not heavy handed, but so I love bringing the kids in. I love it. I love that they feel comfortable. I love that my really, really shy kids, which was what I was, have been invited to at a convention or something to man a table and to look people in the eye and to be able to say to them, I know you're scared, but don't even just look at them. Like they need you. They need help. So just love them. That's all you got to do. See them. And having that my own experience of like my own anxiety drain away as I actually turn my eyes to other people instead of thinking internally all the time and to invite my sort of anxious kids into that opportunity to grow. And I love it. I love it. I love the discipleship. I love the sort of like hands-on on entrepreneurship, on faith, on life, culture sort of stuff. I eat that up. That is such a, and I love the whole vocation like that I don't have to pretend. I really appreciate, I've had different jobs in life where you're kind of like, you got to not lie, but you just have to like sort of, it's not like the main thing on your heart and you got to sort of represent it or whatever. And that's never thing like nothing that would like violate a conscience, but I'm just saying, I love waking up. Like, I don't have to pretend like I really love the families or the kids that I love working with my kids and I love bringing them along. Like, it's it's cool. It's, and I'm sure you guys have the similar experience, but that is like the relief involved in just that. There's not another layer that it can be really authentic. It's like the end of the movie stuff. Like I'm not a millionaire. I'm not super rich. Like we're okay. Like we're feeding our kids. We live in West Virginia. We don't have a high cost of living. We're okay. But I already feel like it's the end of the movie, like it's okay. Like we're together and it's a gift, it's fun. I don't need to like make a big movie deal or to, be a real big time bestseller or get a big award. It's okay. That's like that family stuff is, I wouldn't trade that for $1 jillion.
Yeah. It's a big payoff.
Yeah.
So what are the challenges? It's interesting the age of your kids, because a lot of the dads we have on tend to have kids around our kids' ages. What are the challenges you find? Or the better way to ask that, sorry, is like, what are the ways parenting your kids they get older? Like, how is that different? Like, what are you seeing now that you're having to sort of exhibit as a dad that maybe wasn't as present?
And does it look like the way you always thought it would look?
And I don't know. I heard all the warnings and like all the, like people will tell you, oh, it doesn't. They grow up quick and it goes by fast, and all the cliches, which are I find myself telling other people and just completing the cycle. I love it. I really do. It's different. I'm a sort of a tender-hearted guy. I love the little squishy, like the fat legs and the little squishy kisses and snuggles and stuff. I'm not sure that'll win me like man of the year
Oh, my wife loves me.
stuff. but I love that sort of stuff. So I miss that stage, but I do love this sort of moving into sort of a collegial sort of peer kind of a thing, because I really have tried to sort of our approach, for better or for worse, was that we were going to do like big love, big discipline, sort of like that we were going to not be absent on the sort of like, here's the border. We were going to, I believe that, like Chesterton talks about sort of like walking along a cliffside in the fog is different than walking on a clear day. And sort of like clarity of like, I long for that kind of clarity of like, what should I be doing here? So there's clarity, there's discipline, there's loving sort of correction, but there's big love. There's always going to be hugs, and you're never going to have a doubt about like where you fit in. So that's sort of been and always trying to parent, even from an early age, with the idea that like, yeah, I'm your father and this is your mother and we're like authority. And that's true. There's like, you got to kind of listen to us during this period, but what we're preparing you for, like, we're not trying to prepare you for a life of dependence on us in the same way. So having that in mind the whole time to some degree, and sort of functionally having to sort of, you got to like, you got to eat that. Sorry. And no, you can't hit that person, or you can't, you got to like have these sort of like moments, but it's never been about punishment to me. It's never been about like, I am the moral authority of the universe and you have stepped outside of that boundaries and now I must hurt you in order to like restore cosmic balance. It's always about like, there's a train here, there's a road. And like, oh, you're going off the road here toward the poison berries or whatever. Like, here, come on, let's go back over on the road. Like, here's the road, because I'm walking on the road. You're walking on the road. Pretty soon you'll just be walking on the road, like in your own strength. I won't have to carry you, and you'll be helping other people. Like, don't go over there. That's really dumb. That you can get killed over there. That's really stupid. That hurts people if you go down this down the abandoned mine shaft or whatever. Just kind of stick on the road here. And so there's been like a little bit of a loving sort of correction. Like, we walk in this way. And to sort of have that in mind, and then now to see it is really nice. And to move into that little bit more of a colleague, I like that. I like that I learn from my son and my daughter, like that they're doing things in the world and I'm listening to them. And there's still like a lot of respect and a lot of love and a lot of affection. But I like the changing thing. I'm trying to discipline myself to be less of a lecturer and more of a listener, more of a soft-hearted person who's trying to support them and trying to let them go, like have that right balance of like, you've got protection here, you've got a welcome here, but you've also got this independence. I like it. It's a new challenge. It's fun. The horror stories all come from like, oh, it's going to be so bad because they'll make all these bad decisions and you'll be bailing them out with money all the time. I've heard all those, and I'm not trying to be arrogant, like, oh, that'll never happen. I know there'll be trouble ahead, like there are for all of us. There is for all of us, but I love it. I love this stage. It's there's pain associated with it, but there was pain associated with the other ones too. I haven't wiped a poopy bottom in a long time, and there's different pains, but I like it. It's growing up. I will be the one that's losing it when the last one, or when the first one honestly is gone, for you're really gone. Because that is me. But even that, like, what a privilege that you're not like throwing a party, like they're out of here. I'm so glad. Like, to the pain, just like if we lost someone in a death, which we might at any moment, I'm glad that we had the love. I'm glad that the love was there. I'm glad that when that pain comes, I'll hope that I'll remember to be grateful for it, because it's been a gift all along the way, and it's still a gift. And I hope to God, genuinely to God, that I can. That I would be like a faithful. I want to be a good dad when my daughter's 57. If I'm still alive, just like I hopefully was when she was 7.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Well,
that's beautiful.
Like
okay, I know that's like it's like a perfect summation. Okay, so first of all, thank you so much for hanging with us. We end these with what we call the lightning round, which is native to us. We're the first people to kind of do something like this. And so it's really quick questions. Just top of mind. I'll ask first one. Here we go. Buckle up. If you could have dinner with 3 writers, dead or alive, who are
they'd
they?
be alive while you're eating, though.
Well, I don't know. I'm
Actually,
okay if they're not.
Yeah. You could
Let's
say
leave that
they
in
could
play.
all be dead.
Be a quiet conversation.
Wow. Tolkien. Shakespeare and Saint John, the beloved apostle.
Look at that!
Oh, what a table that would be.
I'm trading right. Shakespeare out for. I'm immediately regretting it. I'm trading Shakespeare out for the writer of Ecclesiastes. Okay, sorry. Final answer, locked in.
Oh, there we go. That's
final.
Okay,
there we go. Favorite book of all time.
The Lord of the Rings.
That's.
Have you heard of it? I'm trying to tell people about it.
I'm just writing it down right now. Rings.
A lot of people are like Green Ember. I'm like, guys, I know, but have you just checked out this Tolkien guy? I think you should give him a chance.
So it's not Therings. That's helpful. Okay,
Lord of Therings.
Lord of Therings.
Yeah.
So okay, next question. Does your wife read your books? And let me say this: if not, I get it. I feel that deeply. If she does, congrats. I just know that books are so much more of a commitment than music. So is that something where she really sits down and reads them, or how does that work?
I think she reads them. It's funny. She's not. This probably sounds terrible, but she's not like. It's almost cool that she's not like in that world and like going crazy. You know, she's not like a super fan. She's a super fan of me, but she's like. It's kind of it's my job, and she likes it, and she's approves of it. And she sort of like looks for mistakes. She's good at that.
Yeah.
In lots of areas. No, I'm just kidding. But she's great. She reads the books, and she's really good at. She does have a good kind of eye for catching errors, which I make a lot of. And so she likes them. Yeah.
All right. So if the whole world could stop and read one of your books, which one would you want them to read?
The Green Ember. I started to say Mooses with Bazookas and other stories that children should never read, but that would be a very stupid answer, and I think I've given enough of those already.
You've had your quotient.
We always have time for one more.
We do. It's Dadville after all. Okay, I'm gonna round up this whole thing. So buckle up. If you wrote a book, this is a great question to actually ask an author. If you wrote a book on being a dad, what would the title of that book be?
It might be Big Love, Big Discipline. I don't like it. It's not very poetic, but...
Oh, yeah.
No, I've got it. It would be this. This is my second correction, and I hope final correction of the evening. This is something my dad always told me everywhere I went. When he would drop me off at school, drop me off at a party, at a game, anywhere, when I would walk out the door, he would say, "Don't forget whose boy you are." And I always say that to my kids. Don't forget whose boy you are. Don't forget whose girl you are. And that would be the title. Don't forget whose boy you are.
I love that. Oh, that's so good. You got to write that book, man. That's beautiful. So anything, before we release you back to the wild, to the hollers of West Virginia, anything that you want to plug? What's the newest thing? What should everybody be paying attention to in your world?
I don't know. I mean, the newest book is The Mooses with Bazookas, which is funny because you guys are such goofballs. I assumed that we'd be talking about that the whole time. Instead, there's all this. We're talking about cancer and shootings, and everything's deep and heavy, and which I love. I love that stuff too. But my newest book is just a very silly book, which actually is helpful too when you're going through a tough time. It's that's part of the design is sometimes it's good just to laugh.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And that's what that book's. It's a very silly book.
Well, just know if you need some soundtracks, me and John are ready.
We are at the ready.
Above strings and fingers poised over keys.
I was really hoping for more of your guys' impromptu little acapella sort of stuff. That's probably among the many disappointments with this conversation. That's one of them.
We do all that off air.
Oh, can you do it? Insert them in.
Oh my gosh!
You'll fix it in post.
Yeah, we do that in post. That's all Jason.
Yeah, it's all post. That's Jason, your favorite guy. Sam, thank you so much.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you
so much. We so appreciate what you do.
Oh, it's such an honor to talk to you guys. I know I joked around a little bit and poked fun at you. I assume that's kind of my love language, growing up with a bunch of brothers and stuff. So I hope that you don't get off this call and cry intensely for hours. But this was a privilege. Thank you, guys.
Well, we do. That's the normal end of
but
Dadville.
That's
prep.
nothing to do with you.
Yeah, that's all that shit.
That's all me and my dad. That's just me.
That's the reason for the podcast. Thanks again, Sam. We really appreciate it, man.
Thanks, man.
This episode is sponsored by Heart.
John, at Heart, their goal is to create a future where all parents feel amazing about feeding their baby, no matter how they do it. Their mission is simple: make the best infant formula in the world.
That's right, Dave. Heart's patented protein blend gets closest to breast milk by including the two most abundant proteins in breast milk, plus whole and partially broken down proteins for a nutritious blend that's gentle on tummies. Heart ran a clinical trial where they compared their formula to a leading infant formula and proved benefits like softer poops, which I know you love.
I love that.
Less spit up, which I know you also love, and
2.
easier digestion and more.
Yeah.
Plus, Heart also supports brain and eye development, immune health, and gut health.
And John, you know me enough to know that you had me at softer poops.
I figured as much, Dave. Yeah.
Curious if Heart is right for your baby? New customers get 10% off your first order with code DADVILLE at byheart.com/podcast. That's 10% off your first order at byheart.com/podcast. This is a limited time offer. Additional terms and conditions apply.